What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Just Hoop Show. Today, it's just me. Thomas Grazzini is out due to health and safety protocols. We don't want to get COVID in the studio, so he's not coming around today. We're not going to be talking about the Southwest Division. We're going to be talking about the Northwest Division. So, quick little breakdown. We're going to start doing every week divisional series. We're going to start doing 2 a week instead of doing 1 a week. So the episodes are just going to extend an extra 10 minutes. We're going to change the way we cover each team. But since Thomas isn't here, last week's episode was a success. It was the first episode on camera. It was great for the two of us who've never been on camera before and have never recorded together in that way. I think it's a great start. I appreciate all the support, all the feedback, everybody who shared, liked, subscribed, commented, anything at all. All support is appreciated. So let's just jump right back into the mix of things. I'm going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves to start off. Last season, they had a 23-49 record. They're probably one of the most disappointing franchises in NBA history, just as a matter of fact that they don't succeed much. They haven't won much in the past decade or so, and they don't seem to have a direction. With Karl-Anthony Towns, it's about to be his 6th season, and they haven't had any type of success. He's only seen the playoffs once, and now they drafted Anthony Edwards last season, who was the runner-up for the Rookie of the Year. So that seems to be the best chance that they have of any type of future success. He's probably the closest thing to a superstar that they have as well. D'Angelo Russell has been on a decline, but he's also been steady moving. He's been on the Brooklyn Nets, then he was moved to the Golden State Warriors, and then he was traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves in hopes of revitalizing his career. In Minnesota, they did pick up Ricky Rubio again, so it's kind of a little bit of guidance for D'Angelo Russell, but he's been on a slump. Hopefully, they can turn things around now that they have Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards together with Russell. That's a trio that now has a season under the belt. They also have Jarrett Culver, who can also somehow make some type of contribution, but it just depends because Culver's a very young player, and young players can't make big impacts on team unless, you're like a budding superstar, i.e. example, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards. Other than having some solid role players, all their top players besides Edward are too young, and they've shown. Russell and Towns have shown that they're number 2s in NBA teams. They're not number 1s. So they're not used to being the best player on the team. They're the number 2. There's nothing wrong with being a number 2 on a championship team. It's just a matter of these guys most likely need to be traded if Minnesota wants to see any type of real success. I feel like Anthony Edwards is the centerpiece. You can grab Karl-Anthony Towns and you can trade him away. I understand what a talent Karl-Anthony Towns is, but you have to understand that you've gone nowhere with him in the years you've had him. You can get plenty for him back as far as draft picks, future compensation. You can also get cash advances, and you can get a bunch of solid role players or young players that can develop with Anthony Edwards and create, a formidable future, other than the disappointment that this team has been over the past decade for a fan base that has shown up every single year. So moving on, we're going to go to another franchise who's been a little bit under the blue lately, Oklahoma City Thunder. They have probably one of the best executives, one of the best GMs, Sam Presti, who's culminated a bunch of picks. But the problem is, what are these picks going to end up being? Because this team this year is extremely young. They don't have a lot of experience. They're probably going to end up not making the playoffs again. Essentially, they're going to be the worst team in the NBA one of the worst teams for the second season in a row, and the worst team in the NBA probably this season. Their only real, young talent is Aleksej, I'm about to slaughter this last name, Pokusevski. They also have Josh Giddey, who they drafted from Australia. He's a young guard. He's 6'5". I'm sorry, he's 6'6". No, correction. He's 6'8" point guard. So he's kind of like a Ben Simmons, but he's a lot skinnier. He's not a scorer. He's a main playmaker. He's going to be along SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So that's going to be interesting. But other than that, they're going to be just a bunch of draft picks, and it's going to be a future project. But the issue is how many, the process in Philly worked, but it also didn't work because you drafted a bunch of young players, but they didn't mesh together. So the issue with Oklahoma City Thunder is, do you take those picks and you take the future and you just continue to draft and develop until you build a championship team, or do you take those picks and package some of your players and you'll get yourself some right now contenders? But again, they're in the Western Conference, and so in Minnesota. It's going to be tough to compete regardless. All these teams have revamped. All these teams have revitalized. Even some of the Eastern Conference teams that they face twice a year have bettered themselves. And it's going to be a very long season for both the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder fans. But at least for Oklahoma City, they have a bright future with those draft picks. So that's the only thing that I can say for Sam Presti. The only reason he has a job is that he's been able to accumulate, draft capital with these picks that you can use in the future to take superstars or diamonds in the rough, or you can use that to get yourself some formidable players on the team. Moving on to one of the more disappointing teams in the offseason, the Portland Trail Blazers. Of course, they lost to the Denver Nuggets in the first round 2-4 when they didn't have Jamal Murray or Will Barton, which was quite disappointing. And we were all thinking to ourselves that Damian Lillard was going to be out of Portland by this point. So he's not out of Portland, and you'd think that they'd give him some fantastic players. And much respect to the Portland Trail Blazers, who've been able to draft Damian Lillard, and they saw what they saw in C.J. McCollum, and they've been able to get two diamonds in the rough. But giving this guy Tony Snell, Greg Brown III, Ben McLemore, and Cody Zeller, I'd be asking for a trade yesterday. There's absolutely nothing that Damian Lillard can really do with the team that he's been given. It's just almost he's at an advantage starting this season. He's a top 3 player in the NBA, and he doesn't have another top 10. He doesn't have another top 15. Maybe he has a top 20, top 25 player in C.J. McCollum. But other than that, he has no help as far as a solid team, a solid system. They fired Terry Stotts, who, of course, went 42-30 last year, but because of their shortcomings in the playoffs, he lost his job, and they got Chauncey Billups. Now, Chauncey Billups can instill a new culture, and he could be a new coach. He's a new blood. He's kind of like Damian Lillard. They're the underdog, but this isn't the 2004 Pistons. There's no Ben Wallace in here. There's no Rip Hamilton. There's only a Chauncey Billups in this team. So I don't really see exactly what Portland is going to do. I would expect them during the season to use C.J. McCollum to form a trade package and use that to have themselves, I don't know, I guess a ticket of Damian Lillard, please don't leave us in the offseason. Don't ask for a trade. Your last bet is to use C.J. McCollum and get yourself another star, all-stars, superstars, or 3 or 4 borderline great young players. Moving on from the Portland Trail Blazers, we're going to go to the Denver Nuggets. So the Nuggets were probably the most surprising team last season for me, just as far as getting to the second round. They got swept by the Phoenix Suns. I thought they'd win a game or two against the team, considering they had Nikola Jokic, the MVP. But they did not have Jamal Murray, who's their all-star point guard, who can drop 50 points in a playoff game on a dime, a high prolific scorer, and he's a great playmaker as well. He's probably one of the best pairing mates for Nikola Jokic. That's why I think the Denver Nuggets didn't pull the trigger on the Jamal Murray and James Harden trade, was just because Jamal Murray is such a good fit around Jokic, and Jokic has other great pieces like Michael Porter Jr. They also now have Will Barton coming back. Bobo is starting to look like he's gaining some muscle. He's looking better. Aaron Gordon has now had a season and a half and an offseason with the training camp with the Denver Nuggets, so that's going to be interesting seeing going forward with this team exactly how they're going to mesh. They kept pretty much the same team. They're doubling down. I love that they keep Monte Morris because he did start and he showed a lot of great minutes in the playoffs last season, so now he can supply those minutes after Jamal Murray comes off the court during the playoffs and during the regular season. So the Denver Nuggets are probably going to be the dark horse. If any team is going to make a surprise, 8th takes out the first, 7th takes out the second, 6th takes out the third, it's going to be an upset coming from the Denver Nuggets. They're just built to win. They were probably the closest to winning the championship last year, other than the Phoenix Suns, had they not lost Jamal Murray and Will Barton. Then again, you can say that for pretty much half of the teams in the NBA playoffs last year. So my prediction is Michael Porter Jr. is going to make a leap. He's probably going to be the most improved player and possibly an all-star reserve. I mean, the guy averaged 19 points per game, and he shot 44% from deep. He's the closest thing. He's 6'10" to Kevin Durant. He's a prototypical Kevin Durant. The difference is he takes it to the basket a little bit more. He's a little bit unorthodox with his shot, and the way he gets his shots off reminds me a lot of Duncan Robinson. He can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot off the mid-range pull-up. He's great at pulling the three off the screen. And catch and shoot is one of his specialties. So he's almost an oversized Klay Thompson mixed with Kevin Durant. Moving on from there, and last but not least, we have the Utah Jazz. So the Utah Jazz are probably my favorites to win the Western Conference as far as making the NBA Finals. I think the Utah Jazz are a dark horse to make the NBA Finals next season. So they did the best job out of all the teams to supply themselves a chance at not just improving the roster, but coming in and really shaking the Western Conference. So the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, they built a super team. We'll talk about that later. But they lost in the second round last season to the short-handed Clippers, who lost Kawhi early in the series, and they couldn't capitalize. So they ultimately collapsed against the Clippers. Donovan Mitchell couldn't step up. Rudy Gobert couldn't defend the paint for his life. Nobody could guard the perimeter, and it was just a whole shit show for the Utah Jazz. They ended up losing in that second round, but they were one of the best teams in the league last season. They ranked top 5 in defense, and they ranked top 5 in offense. They added Whiteside, who's a perfect replacement for Rudy Gobert. He could defend the rim, he could rebound, he could block shots, he could grab boards, get you those second chance points. He could set screens, he could come off the pick and roll and catch lobs. So he's literally just another Walmart version of Rudy Gobert, and it's a perfect fit. And I'm glad that Hassan Whiteside has found himself a nice home and a nice position to put himself in a position to win an NBA championship. Following that, Quinn Snyder comes from the Greg Popovich tree, which is important for the next signing, Rudy Gay. So Rudy Gay comes from the Spurs. The Spurs were coached by Greg Popovich. Quinn Snyder comes directly from that tree, which means Rudy Gay being in Utah is easy money. Rudy Gay is going to be put in perfectly. He's a great shooter. He stretches the floor, as well as Eric Pascal, who's traded from the Warriors to the Jazz and is also Donovan Mitchell's best friend. So they added 2 stretch fours that are going to give even more space into the Utah Jazz and add even more versatility on the defensive end, because both of these guys are good at defense, and they can shoot the basketball, and they can also both drive and play in the post. So they had the 2 really dynamic players. I think the Jazz probably have the best. Like I said, they are the dark horse of the Western Conference to beat the Los Angeles Lakers, to beat the Clippers. So if you got a little bit of money and you want to put a nice little bet, the Utah Jazz to win the championship is probably your safest bet, just considering now they have Dwayne Wade. So that guidance for Donovan Mitchell is something big that people need to talk about a little bit more. You also they got Mike Conley returning, who's a veteran. He's now been with the team a couple of seasons. So this system is very consistent, and it's easy for a lot of the players because similar to the Denver Nuggets, they kept most of their team, but instead they added a bunch of really good complementary pieces to either come off the bench or start. You can rotate them either way, and they're going to come in and they're going to improve the team. And that's going to probably be the most improved team out of this division is going to be the Utah Jazz. I mean, I know they already were the first in the NBA Western Conference, and they went 52-20, but they'll probably be able to win 60 games this season easily if they really tried and they really, really wanted to. That pretty much makes it up for everything. Hopefully next week we can have a longer episode. We'll have Thomas back. Hopefully he does not have the COVID, and we wish him to be safe and sound and back with us recording. Thank you, everybody. That's it for the Just Hoops show today. Have a good one.